You don't belong here, Victoria, but no!
You have no idea where you're standing. This company was always mine.
You're lying!
Marcus, we didn't know.
The cameras were already rolling when Marcus Hale stepped forward, took the microphone, and smiled like he owned the room. His wife, Victoria Hale, stood under the lights, seconds away from becoming the face of a global media cover. "I'm in love," he said. Not with her. A woman in a red dress stepped out of the shadows. The crew froze. The flashes didn't stop. Marcus didn't know the studio, the cameras, the entire production, all answered to Victoria. And he had just announced his affair in the middle of her empire. Victoria didn't react. She just watched the door, because someone had just walked in carrying the truth that would destroy him. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Weeks earlier, long before the cameras, Victoria had already seen it coming. The studio smelled faintly of heated lights and fresh paint, the kind of place built for moments that looked effortless on the outside and cost everything behind the scenes. Victoria stood on her mark, shoulders straight, chin level. The photographer adjusted his lens. Assistants whispered. Producers checked monitors. Everything was ready. Everything was hers. But no one in that room said it out loud. To them, Victoria Hale was a quiet creative. A woman who had somehow earned a cover feature after years of working behind the scenes in publishing. A modest success story, a soft-spoken name in a loud industry. Marcus believed that version of her more than anyone. He leaned against a lighting rig, scrolling through his phone, barely paying attention to the setup. His reflection caught in a polished metal panel, and he adjusted his jacket, smoothing the fabric like it mattered more than the moment happening 10 feet away. He didn't look at her, not really. Not anymore. 5 minutes, the director called out. Victoria nodded once. Calm, measured. A production assistant approached her with a clipboard. "We'll start with the primary cover shot, then move into the interview segment." Victoria's eyes skimmed the schedule. She didn't need to read it. She already knew every segment, every sponsor, every distribution partner tied to this shoot. She had approved all of it. "Everything on track?" she asked quietly. The assistant hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "Yes, everything's been cleared." Cleared, the word lingered. Victoria handed the clipboard back and stepped into position again. Across the room, a man in a tailored gray suit had just entered through the side door. He didn't announce himself, he didn't interrupt, but he didn't blend in either. Benjamin Lawson, he stood near the wall, holding a thin sealed folder against his side. His gaze found Victoria immediately. Not curious, not impressed, respectful. He gave a small nod. She didn't return it. Not yet. Marcus noticed him too, but only in passing. Just another corporate type, another background figure. He turned back to his phone, thumb tapping against the screen as a message lit up. Lauren Pierce. His lips curved slightly. Victoria saw that. She didn't look at the phone. She didn't need to. The shift in his posture, the subtle ease in his shoulders, the way he exhaled slower, she had learned to read those signs long ago. She had stopped reacting to them even longer ago. "Places, everyone," the director said. The room tightened. The chatter dropped. The cameras aligned. Victoria stepped forward into the light. For a moment, everything was still. This was what the world would see. A composed woman. Controlled, elegant. Earned. They would never see the years behind it. The nights she stayed awake reviewing contracts while Marcus chased another idea that never held. The quiet transfers she made to cover debts he never admitted existed. The signatures she placed on documents he never bothered to read. He thought she was lucky. He thought she was small. He thought her work was a side project that somehow got attention it didn't deserve. And for a long time she let him think that. Because it was easier than explaining a truth he wouldn't understand. Because she wanted to be chosen without it. Because she needed to know if love could exist without power. The photographer lifted his hand. "Ready," Victoria inhaled slowly. From the corner of her eye, she saw Benjamin shift his weight, just slightly. Not impatience, timing. He was waiting, so was she. Marcus pushed himself off the wall and walked toward the center of the room. No one stopped him at first. He moved like he belonged there. Like everything in that space existed for him. Victoria didn't turn, not yet. He reached for the microphone clipped to the director's sensation. The director blinked, confused, but didn't react fast enough. "I have something to say," Marcus announced. The room hesitated. This wasn't part of the plan. Victoria closed her eyes for the briefest second, then opened them again. Steady, of course. This was how he would do it. Not privately, not with respect. With an audience upon smiled wider, feeding off the silence. "Something I should have said a long time ago." A ripple moved through the crew. A few exchanged looks. The photographer lowered his camera slightly. Victoria remained, her gaze shifted. Not to Marcus. To the door. Benjamin was already moving. The folder in his hand didn't look important. Thin, unremarkable. The kind of thing people ignored. The kind of thing that changed everything. Marcus continued, his voice louder now, confident. "Certain I'm in love." A breath caught somewhere in the room. He turned, extending his hand, and Lauren Pierce stepped forward into the light. Victoria watched Benjamin stop just inside the room, watched him meet her eyes, watched him give the smallest nod. She didn't move, she didn't speak. She didn't look at her husband standing 10 feet away, unraveling everything he thought he controlled. Because she already knew how this ended, and for the first time in a long time, she wasn't waiting for him. She was waiting for the moment. Marcus's voice didn't shake. That was the first thing Victoria noticed. Not the words. Not the woman standing beside him in that red dress. Not the way the entire room had gone silent except for the low hum of the lights above them. It was his certainty. "I'm done pretending," Marcus said, fingers tightening around Lauren Pierce's hand, or as if claiming something he had already decided belonged to him. "I deserve something real." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone near the back let out a quiet breath. The photographer lowered his camera completely now. No one was sure where to look. Victoria didn't look at Marcus. She didn't look at Lauren either. She stood exactly where she had been placed, her posture unchanged, her expression steady. The light hit her face perfectly, catching the calm in her eyes instead of the storm the room expected to see. Lauren smiled like she had won. It was a small smile, controlled, but it held something sharper underneath. She stepped half a pace closer to Marcus, her fingers curling more confidently around his arm now that the moment had passed the point of no return. "I think it's better this way," Lauren said lightly, her voice carrying just enough to reach the crew. "Honesty saves everyone time." Marcus let out a short laugh, relieved, encouraged. "Exactly," he said. "We've been living in something fake for a long time." Victoria heard every word. She let them land. She didn't interrupt. She didn't defend herself. She didn't ask a single question. Because there was nothing left to clarify. Across the room, Benjamin Lawson had stopped moving. He stood just inside the door now, the sealed folder still tucked under his arm, watching the scene unfold with the quiet patience of someone who understood timing better than emotion. His presence didn't belong in this chaos. It cut through it. Marcus finally looked at Victoria, expecting something. A reaction. A crack. "You're not going to say anything?" he asked. His tone shifted slightly. Less confident now, not because he doubted his decision, but because her silence wasn't following the script he had written in his head. Victoria turned her head slowly, not fully toward him, just enough. "I heard you," she said. Her voice was even, controlled, almost soft, that unsettled him more than anger would have. Lauren glanced between them, her smile tightening for the first time. "Well, that makes things easier, doesn't it?" she said, trying to pull the moment back into her control. Victoria didn't answer her. She stepped down from the mark. Her heels made a white sound against the floor. Measured, unhurried. The crew parted without being asked. No one touched her. No one spoke. It wasn't fear. It was something closer to instinct. Marcus frowned, watching her move. Not toward him, not toward the exit, but toward the far side of the room. Toward the door. Toward Benjamin. "Victoria," he called, sharper now. "Don't walk away while I'm talking to you." She kept walking. That was new. For years she had stayed, listened, adjusted, smoothed over his tone, his impatience, his need to feel larger than the room he stood in. Now she didn't even turn back. Marcus's jaw tightened. "This is exactly what I mean," he said louder now, glancing around as if the room itself needed to validate him. "You never engage, you never fight for anything, you just stand there like nothing matters." A few people looked down. No one agreed. No one spoke. Victoria reached Benjamin. Up close, the folder in his hand looked even more ordinary. Thin, paper, a single clasp holding it shut. He held it out to her without a word. "Is it finalized?" she asked quietly. Benjamin nodded once. As of this morning, there was no need to say more. Victoria took the folder. It felt light in her hands, too light for something that carried years of work, layers of ownership, or decisions made in rooms Marcus had never been invited into, and signatures he had never thought to question. Behind her, Marcus let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "What is that?" he asked, gesturing vaguely toward the folder. "Another one of your little projects?" The word little hung in the air. It always had. Victoria ran her fingers lightly along the edge of the folder, not opening it yet, not looking at what was inside. She already knew. "That depends," she said, her tone still calm. On Marcus pressed. She turned then, fully this time. For the first time since he had spoken into that microphone, she faced him directly. Marcus expected anger. He expected humiliation. He expected something he could push against. What he saw instead made his chest tighten for a reason he couldn't name. Clarity. "I just want to understand something," she said. Lauren shifted beside him, uneasy now. "There's nothing to understand. He's been honest. That's more than most people do." Victoria's gaze flicked to her for a brief second. Not hostile, measured. "And you believe this is honesty?" Victoria asked. Lauren straightened slightly. "I believe it's better than pretending." Victoria held her eyes for a moment longer than necessary. Then she looked back at Marcus. "You chose this room," Victoria said. Marcus blinked. "What, this moment?" she continued. "You planned it." He hesitated for half a second, then lifted his chin. "Yes, I did, because I'm done hiding. I'm done being in something that holds me back." The words sounded stronger when he said them out loud, more convincing. He needed that. Victoria nodded once. "Good," she said. That single word landed heavier than anything else she could have said. Marcus frowned. "Good?" She didn't explain. She didn't argue. She didn't even raise her voice. Instead, she shifted her weight slightly and looked past him, at the crew, the cameras, the lights still pointed toward her. Everything was still recording. Of course it was. Benjamin stepped back half a pace, giving her space without drawing attention to himself. Marcus followed her gaze, then looked back at her, irritation rising. "If you're trying to make a scene, you already did," she said. "Quiet." Final. The room tightened again. Lauren's finger slipped slightly from Marcus's arm, not enough to let go, just enough to show doubt. Marcus felt it. His grip on the microphone tightened. "Then say what you need to say," he snapped. "Let's get it over with." Victoria looked down at the folder in her hands, then back up at him. For a moment, everything slowed. The lights, the breathing in the room, the quiet shift of people leaning forward without realizing it. Victoria didn't open the folder. Not yet. Instead, she let the silence stretch just long enough to change the weight of the room. And then, very calmly, she said, "Did you bring everything you wanted to say with you today?" Marcus frowned. What does that even mean? Victoria tilted her head slightly. "Because once we're done here," she said, "you don't get to take it back." The words didn't sound like a warning. They sounded like a boundary. Marcus opened his mouth to respond. But for the first time since he stepped forward, the confidence in his chest faltered. Behind Victoria, Benjamin's phone vibrated once in his pocket. He didn't take it out. He didn't need to. Victoria's eyes flicked toward him for just a fraction of a second. That was enough. Something had moved, something outside this room, something already in motion. She turned back to Marcus, still holding the unopened folder, waiting, not for his answer, or for his choice. Marcus didn't answer right away. For the first time since he grabbed the microphone, something in his expression flickered. Not doubt, not regret, discomfort. It was small, barely there, but Victoria saw it. Lauren didn't. She tightened her grip on his arm again, stepping slightly forward as if she could anchor him back into the version of himself she preferred. Confident, certain, untouchable. "You're overthinking this," Lauren said, her tone light but edged now. "He's made his choice." That's what matters. Victoria didn't look at her. Marcus exhaled sharply, forcing the moment back under his control. "I don't need to answer that," he said. "I've already said everything that needs to be said." His voice was louder now. Firmer, performing again. "That's fine," Victoria replied. 2 words, nothing more, but they didn't sound like surrender. They sounded like permission. Marcus frowned, trying to read her. He couldn't. That bothered him more than anything she could have said. "Then what are you doing?" he asked, gesturing toward the folder, still closed in her hands. "Because if this is some kind of statement, it's not a statement," she said. Her fingers moved slightly along the edge of the clasp. still not opening it. Then what is it? Lauren pressed sharper now. Victoria's gaze shifted past them again, not dismissive, intentional. Taking in the room, the cameras, the crew, the director who hadn't called cut, the assistants who had stopped pretending this was still a photo shoot, everything still running, everything still recording. She looked back at Marcus. It's timing, she said. He let out a short, irritated laugh. Timing for what? You walking away? Victoria didn't respond. Because she wasn't walking away. That realization hit Marcus a second too late. Across the room, one of the producers stepped closer to another, whispering under their breath. A technician adjusted a monitor, but their eyes stayed fixed on the center of the room. No one had resumed their work. No one had left. They were waiting. Marcus felt it now, the shift, the weight of attention turning. Not away from Victoria, toward him. He straightened his shoulders, instinctively trying to reclaim ground. If you think standing there quietly makes you look strong, I don't need to look strong, Victoria said. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. I just need to be clear. The word clear landed harder than he expected. Marcus's jaw tightened. Clear about what? Victoria held his gaze. For years, she said. You've decided what I am. Lauren let out a small scoff. Oh, come on. Victoria didn't stop. You decided what my work meant, she continued. What it was worth, what it wasn't. Each sentence came measured, controlled, no emotions spilling over. That made it sharper. Marcus shifted his weight. Because I saw it. I lived with it. Victoria nodded once. Yes, she said, you lived next to it. The correction was quiet, but it cut. A few people in the room exchanged looks. Marcus felt it. That subtle movement of perception slipping away from him. He stepped forward. Don't twist this, he said. You had every chance to prove something more, Victoria. You chose not to. Lauren nodded quickly beside him. Exactly. You can't blame him for wanting more. Victoria's eyes moved to her again. For a moment, Lauren held that gaze. Then something in it made her shift, just slightly. Victoria looked back at Marcus. I never needed to prove anything to you, she said. The words didn't sound defensive, or they sounded final. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but the words didn't come as easily this time. He could feel it now. The room wasn't reacting the way he expected. No sympathy, no agreement, just silence, watching. Victoria lowered her eyes briefly to the folder again. This time her thumb rested on the clasp, not opening it, not yet. Benjamin's phone vibrated again. This time he took it out. He glanced at the screen, then at Victoria. A subtle movement, almost invisible. But she saw it, and that was enough. Marcus noticed the glance, too. His frown deepened. Who is that? He asked, irritation creeping into his voice. And why does it look like you've been planning something? Victoria looked at him. You planned today, she said. I plan to be honest, Marcus shot back. No, she said calmly. You plan to control the outcome. Lauren let out a short laugh. This is ridiculous. Victoria didn't respond to her. She stepped forward, just one step. Not toward Marcus, but into the center of the room. The shift was immediate. People leaned in without realizing it. The space adjusted around her. Marcus felt it like a loss of balance. What are you doing? He asked again, but the question had changed now. It wasn't irritation anymore. It was uncertainty. Victoria stopped. She didn't raise the folder. She didn't open it. She simply stood there, holding it at her side, letting the silence stretch, until it no longer belonged to Marcus. You wanted this to be public, she said. He swallowed. Yes, then we'll keep it that way. Lauren's hand slipped fully from his arm this time. Not dramatically, just enough. Marcus didn't notice. He was too focused on Victoria. What does that mean? He asked. Victoria's eyes held his. It means you don't get to decide when this ends. The words landed heavier than anything before them. Marcus felt something shift under his feet. Not visibly, but enough. You're overcomplicating this, he said quickly, trying to regain control. There's nothing left to say. I've moved on. Victoria nodded, slowly. I believe you, she said. That wasn't what he expected. It disarmed him more than anger would have. Lauren glanced at him, then back at Victoria, her expression tightening. Then why are we still standing here? Victoria turned her head slightly. Not toward Marcus. Not toward Lauren, toward Benjamin. Just for a second. He gave the smallest nod. Then he stepped forward. Not into the center, just close enough to be seen, close enough to matter. Marcus followed the movement, his irritation sharpening again. Seriously, he said. Who is this guy? Benjamin didn't answer him. He didn't need to. He stopped a few feet behind Victoria, silent, composed, the folder now clearly in her hands instead of his. Marcus's gaze dropped to it again. That thin, ordinary folder, it irritated him, because it didn't look like anything important, or because she was treating it like it was. Whatever that is, Marcus said, his voice tightening, this isn't the time for it. Victoria looked down at the folder once more. Her fingers tightened slightly around the edge. Then she looked back at him. This is exactly the time, she said. The room stilled. No one moved. No one spoke. For the first time, Marcus didn't interrupt. He waited, and Victoria finally moved her thumb, not to open it, but to press firmly against the clasp. A small, precise motion, a decision. The click hadn't happened yet. But everyone in the room felt it coming, and Marcus realized too late that whatever was inside that folder was not something he had accounted for. Victoria didn't open the folder. Not yet. Her thumb rested on the clasp, holding the moment in place, stretching it just enough that the silence in the room began to feel deliberate instead of uncertain. Marcus shifted his weight again. He didn't like waiting. He never had. Whatever this is, he said, his voice tightening, you're dragging it out for effect. Victoria looked at him. No, she said. I'm making sure you understand it. Lauren crossed her arms, impatient slipping through now. There's nothing to understand. He's already moved on. That's the reality. Victoria's gaze moved to her. For a brief second it stayed there, not angry, not threatened, assessing. Lauren felt it. The way Victoria looked at her, not as a rival, not even as a problem, but as something already accounted for. She didn't like that. You don't get to stand there and judge, Lauren said, sharper now. You've been holding him back for years. A few people in the room flinched at the bluntness. Marcus didn't stop her. That, more than anything, settled something in Victoria. She turned back to him. You believe that? She asked. Marcus hesitated, only for a second. But it was there. I believe I outgrew this, he said finally, gesturing vaguely between them. I needed more. More ambition, more vision, more presence. He glanced at Lauren as if borrowing certainty from her. Victoria nodded slowly. More visibility, she said. Exactly, Marcus replied, relieved to hear something he could agree with. Victoria lowered her eyes briefly as if considering the word. Visibility. Then she looked back at him. And you think I didn't have it, she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus shrugged. You had potential, but you never stepped into it. Victoria let the words settle. They didn't hurt. Not anymore. They clarified. Across the room, one of the senior producers shifted uneasily, glancing at another colleague. The tension wasn't just personal anymore. It was starting to feel like something else. Something structural. Something bigger than a relationship breaking apart. Victoria took another small step forward, not aggressive, just enough to close the space. You're right about one thing, she said. Marcus straightened slightly, ready to take that as confirmation. You needed more, she continued. Lauren smirked, as if the argument had finally turned. Victoria didn't look at her. But not from me, she finished. The room stilled again. Marcus's expression tightened. What does that even mean? Victoria didn't answer immediately. She shifted the folder slightly in her hands. Still closed, still quiet. Benjamin remained just behind her, still as a shadow, but present enough that anyone paying attention could feel the weight of his role without knowing it. Marcus noticed him again, really noticed him this time. Why is he still here? Marcus asked, pointing slightly. This is personal. He shouldn't even be in the room. Benjamin didn't react. Victoria did. He's exactly where he needs to be, she said. Marcus let out a short, incredulous laugh. Of course he is. For another one of your quiet decisions no one else understands. Victoria held his gaze. For years, she said. You didn't ask. The words were simple, but they landed with weight. Marcus frowned. Ask what? Anything, she said. Lauren rolled her eyes. This is ridiculous. You're acting like this is some deep mystery. It's not. He's leaving. That's it. Victoria's eyes moved to her again. And you're sure that's what this is? She asked. Lauren lifted her chin. I know what it is. Victoria held her gaze for a moment longer, then looked back at Marcus. Then say it clearly, Victoria said. Marcus blinked. I already did. No, she said calmly. You said you're in love. She took another small step. Say the rest. The room leaned in. Marcus felt it again, that subtle shift of pressure. He didn't like it, but he also didn't back down. I'm leaving you, he said. The words landed, solid, final. Lauren's expression softened slightly, as if this was the confirmation she had been waiting for. Victoria nodded once. Thank you, she said. Marcus frowned. That's it? That's enough, she replied. It should have felt like a victory. It didn't. Something in the way she accepted it, without hesitation, without resistance, made it feel like he had just confirmed something for her, instead of taking something from her. Marcus's grip on the microphone tightened again. "Don't act like this doesn't matter," he said. "You don't get to just stand there and pretend you're above it." Victoria's expression didn't change. "I'm not above it," she said. "I'm just not inside it anymore." The distinction hit harder than he expected. Lauren shifted again, less certain now. "You're making this dramatic for no reason," she said. "If you're done, then be done." Victoria turned slightly, angling her body so she wasn't facing either of them directly anymore. She looked at the room, the cameras, still recording. The director frozen between calling cut and letting it continue, the crew no longer pretending this was just a production. She looked back at Marcus. "You wanted this to be seen," she said. He hesitated. "Yes, then let it be seen clearly." His jaw tightened. "It already is." Victoria shook her head slightly. "Not yet." The words landed differently this time. Not as a threat, as a fact. Marcus felt it. That quiet certainty that didn't need to raise its voice. He took a step forward. "What are you trying to prove?" he demanded. Victoria looked down at the folder one more time. Her fingers shifted, the clasp pressed under her thumb. This time it moved. A soft click broke through the silence. Small, precise, final. Lauren's breath caught before she could stop it. Marcus didn't react immediately. He was still focused on Victoria's face, trying to read what had just changed. She didn't open the folder yet, but now it was no longer sealed. That alone shifted the air. Benjamin's phone vibrated again. This time he stepped forward just enough to be beside her instead of behind. He leaned in slightly, his voice low, meant only for her. "They're ready," he said. Victoria didn't look at him. "I know," she replied. Marcus caught the exchange. His irritation flared into something sharper. "Ready for what?" he snapped. Victoria lifted her eyes back to him, calm, unshaken. "Your timing," she said, "wasn't the only one that mattered today." Marcus's expression faltered. Just slightly. And for the first time since he walked into the frame, a single thought pushed through his certainty. He might not be in control of this anymore. Victoria opened the folder halfway, just enough for a single page to be visible. Not enough for anyone else to read, but enough for Marcus to see her hand steady on the document, enough to understand that whatever was inside had already been decided before he ever spoke. He took a step closer without thinking. "What is that?" he asked again. But this time the question wasn't dismissive, it was cautious. Victoria didn't answer. She simply held the folder, waiting, not for permission, for the moment, and then Benjamin's phone rang. Not a vibration this time. A sharp, clear tone that cut through the room. Every head turned. He glanced at the screen, then at Victoria, and for the first time since he entered, something shifted in his expression. Not concern. Confirmation. He answered the call without stepping away. "Yes," he said. "We're in position." A pause. Then he looked directly at Victoria. "It's official," he added. Marcus felt it. That word. Official. It didn't belong to him. It didn't belong to this moment he thought he controlled. Victoria closed the folder again. Slowly, deliberately, and for the first time she smiled. Not at Marcus, at the timing. Marcus stared at her smile. It wasn't relief. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even directed at him. That unsettled him more than anything she had said. "What's official?" he asked. His voice sharper now, cutting through the silence that had settled too heavily around him. Benjamin ended the call without answering. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, his attention returning fully to Victoria. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Everything that mattered had already been communicated. Victoria adjusted her grip on the folder, then lowered it slightly, letting it rest against her side instead of holding it between them like a shield. Marcus took a step closer. "Victoria," he said, slower this time, trying to regain control through tone instead of volume. "Whatever this is, you're turning something simple into a spectacle." She tilted her head slightly. "You made it a spectacle," she said. Lauren shifted again, the confidence in her posture no longer as clean. She glanced around the room, noticing now what she hadn't before. No one was moving, no one was laughing, no one was siding with them. The attention wasn't on the scandal anymore. It was on Victoria. "Overreacting," Lauren said, but the edge had softened. "This doesn't need to go any further." Victoria's eyes met hers again. "It already has," she said. The words landed quietly, but they closed something. Marcus exhaled, impatient. "Then say it," he snapped. "Stop dragging this out. If you have something to prove, prove. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, not angry, not hurt, just finished. You've already proven what you needed to, she said. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Victoria didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned her body slightly, not away, not fully toward him, but enough that she could see the entire room again. The cameras, still rolling, the crew, still watching. The production team that had spent months preparing this moment. For her, she looked back at Marcus. You said you wanted more, she said. I did, he replied quickly. You said you needed something real. Yes, she nodded once. Then let's make sure you understand exactly what you walked away from. The room tightened again. Lauren's hand slipped fully away from Marcus this time. She didn't reach for him again. Marcus felt it. He ignored it. This isn't about what I walked away from, he said. It's about what I chose. Victoria's expression didn't change. Those are the same thing, she said. Marcus opened his mouth to argue. Nothing came out. Because for the first time, the statement didn't sound like something he could push against. It sounded like something already decided. Benjamin stepped slightly closer again. Not interrupting, positioning. Victoria felt it. The timing. She glanced down at the folder once more. Then slowly she opened it. Not wide, just enough. A single sheet of paper came into view. Clean, official, signed. Marcus leaned forward without realizing it. He couldn't read the words from where he stood, but he could see the structure. Legal formatting, signatures, something formal, something real. What is that? He asked again, but this time there was no dismissal in it. Only tension. Victoria didn't hand it to him. She didn't lift it for the room to see. She simply looked at it for a second, then back at him. This, she said, is what I've been working on while you were deciding I wasn't enough. Lauren let out a small, nervous laugh. A document doesn't change anything. Victoria's gaze moved to her. It already has, she said. Lauren didn't respond this time. Marcus stepped closer again, his voice lowering. If this is about money, it's not about money, Victoria said. That answer came too quickly, too cleanly. It made him pause. Then what is it about, he pressed. Victoria held his gaze, ownership. The word landed differently, he frowned. Of what? She didn't answer, not directly. Instead, she shifted her eyes toward the wall behind him, toward the brand logo stretched across the backdrop of the set. Marcus followed her gaze instinctively, then looked back at her, confused. What are you doing, he asked. Victoria didn't look away from the logo. You've stood in front of that name all morning, she said. Marcus's irritation flared again. Because I'm part of this I built. He stopped himself, because even as he said it, something felt off. Victoria looked back at him. No, she said quietly. You didn't. The words didn't come with accusation. They came with certainty. Marcus felt the room shift again. Subtle, but unmistakable. What are you talking about? He asked. Victoria glanced down at the document again, then back up. Everything in this room, she said slowly, runs through a structure you never ask about. Lauren's expression changed, just slightly, not understanding, but sensing something. Marcus shook his head. That's not true. I've been here for years. I know how this works. Victoria held his gaze. No, she said. You know what you were told? The distinction hit harder than anything else. Marcus felt it. That gap between what he believed and what she was implying. Benjamin stepped forward one more time. Now fully beside her, not behind, not in the background, present. Marcus's eyes moved to him again, sharper now. You keep standing there like this is some kind of courtroom, he said. If you have something to say, say it. Benjamin didn't respond. He simply looked at Victoria, waiting. Victoria nodded slightly, not to Marcus. To him, a signal, a decision. She turned back to Marcus. Her voice didn't rise, it didn't need to. You announced your affair, she said. The words hung in the air, clear, measured. Then she took one small step forward and finished the sentence, in my company. The room went completely still. Marcus didn't react immediately, because his mind didn't process it, not fully, not yet. Lauren blinked, her expression tightening. What? She said. Victoria didn't repeat herself, she didn't elaborate. She simply held the folder in her hands, the document inside, still visible, still real, still grounded in something neither of them had accounted for. Marcus let out a short, disbelieving laugh. That's not, he started, then stopped because something in the room had changed. Not dramatically, but enough. The way the crew looked at Victoria, the way Benjamin stood beside her, the way no one corrected her, no one laughed, no one dismissed it. Marcus's smile faded just slightly.
That's not possible.
He said, but now the certainty in his voice was thinner. Victoria didn't argue. She didn't push. She didn't need to. Because for the first time since he picked up that microphone, Marcus wasn't sure he was right, and that uncertainty was louder than anything she could have said. Marcus's laugh came out too quickly, too sharp, too thin. That's not possible, he said again, louder this time, as if volume alone could force reality back into something he understood. You don't own this company. You run a small division. Everyone knows that. No one in the room agreed. No one said it out loud, but the silence changed. Lauren felt at first her eyes moved across the crew, searching for the easy reaction she had expected. Confusion, dismissal, even quiet agreement. Instead, she saw hesitation, recognition. A few people weren't looking at Marcus anymore. They were watching Victoria, waiting. That's not how any of this works, Lauren added quickly, trying to recover ground Marcus was losing by the second. Ownership structures, boards, investors. This isn't something you can just claim. Victoria didn't respond to her. She didn't need to. Instead, she lifted the single sheet of paper slightly higher. Not enough for the entire room to read. Just enough for the people closest to her to see the letterhead, the seal, the signatures. Benjamin stepped forward, his voice calm, measured, cutting through the tension without raising itself. The documentation is fully executed, he said, filed and confirmed as of this morning. He didn't look at Marcus, he addressed the room. That mattered, Marcus felt it. The shift from personal to formal, from argument to record. What documentation? Marcus demanded. What are you even talking about? Victoria finally turned the page outward. Not dramatically, not like a reveal, just enough. A few people near the front leaned in instinctively. The director took a step closer without realizing it. One of the producers whispered under their breath. Recognition spread quietly, not loud, but fast. Marcus didn't see the details. He saw their reactions, and that unsettled him more than the document itself. Victoria, he said, forcing steadiness back into his voice. If this is some kind of negotiation tactic, this is not the place. It's not a tactic, she said. Her voice was still calm, still controlled. It's a record. The word landed differently. Lauren's fingers curled slightly at her sides. A record of what? Victoria looked at her briefly, then back at Marcus. A transaction, she said. Marcus shook his head, frustration rising. You're not making sense. What transaction? Victoria didn't answer immediately. She let the silence stretch again, long enough for the room to lean in. Long enough for Marcus to feel the gap widen between what he believed and what was unfolding in front of him. Then she spoke. The acquisition closed at midnight, she said. Benjamin's voice followed, precise. Final valuation confirmed and signed. Marcus frowned. What acquisition? Victoria held his gaze. The one you've been standing inside all morning. The words hit. Not fully, not yet, but enough to crack something. Lauren let out a short, uncertain laugh. That doesn't mean anything. Companies change hands all the time. That doesn't make you. She stopped, because even she heard it, the way Victoria said it. Not like someone describing something external, like someone describing something they owned. Marcus's eyes flicked back to the logo behind him, then to the cameras, then to the crew. For the first time, he didn't see them as background. He saw their attention, their stillness, their lack of contradiction. What are you saying? He asked, quieter now. Victoria stepped forward, one step. Enough to close the distance between them. Not aggressive, just undeniable. I'm saying, she replied, that everything in this room is operating under a structure you never understood. Marcus's chest tightened. That doesn't mean it means, Benjamin interrupted gently, not raising his voice, that the controlling entity behind this studio, this production, and the media group funding it has changed ownership. Marcus turned sharply toward him. And you think that has anything to do with her? Benjamin didn't smile. He didn't argue. He simply said, it has everything to do with her. The room went still again. Lauren's breath caught. Marcus stared at Victoria, really stared at her, as if seeing her for the first time. This is insane, he said. But now the words lacked force. You're telling me you bought a media company overnight? Victoria shook her head slightly. No, she said, I built it. The words landed differently, not sudden. Not impulsive, layered, earned. Marcus's mind raced, trying to reconcile what he knew with what he was hearing. You didn't build this, he said. You worked on projects? You had a small publishing line. Victoria didn't react to the word small. She let him finish. Because she needed him to. That's what you saw, she said. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's what existed. No, she replied, so you understood. The distinction cut again. Lauren stepped back without realizing it. Just half a step. Distance. Marcus didn't notice. He was too focused on Victoria. You're twisting things, he said. You're taking credit for something bigger than you. Victoria didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply lifted the document again. This isn't credit, she said. It's ownership. Benjamin added. The controlling stake exceeds 80% post-acquisition. Marcus blinked. The number didn't register fully, but the scale did. That's not possible, he said again, but this time it sounded like a question. Victoria held his gaze. For 11 years, she said. He didn't respond. You saw late nights, she continued. Small checks, quiet meetings. Marcus's throat tightened. You decided what they meant, she said. The room felt smaller now, closer. Marcus tried to find something solid to push against. But this level, this doesn't just happen, he said. Deals like that don't close without visibility, without industry recognition, without noise? Victoria asked. He stopped. Because that was exactly what he meant. Yes, he said. Victoria nodded. That's where you were wrong. The words didn't sound like a victory. They sounded like a conclusion. Lauren shook her head, trying to pull the moment back. Even if that's true, it doesn't change anything. He's still leaving you. Victoria looked at her for the first time. She said quietly, That part is accurate. Lauren blinked. Marcus felt something shift again. Not outward, inside. A realization forming too slowly to stop. You're serious, he said. Victoria didn't answer, because she didn't need to. Benjamin stepped slightly forward again. Board notifications have already been issued, he said. Formal transition statements will be released within the hour. Marcus turned toward him, anger flashing again. Transition of what? Benjamin met his eyes. Authority. The word landed heavy, final. Marcus's grip on the microphone loosened. It slipped slightly in his hand. No one moved to pick it up. No one offered to help. He looked around the room again. At the crew. At the people who had been his colleagues, his audience. And for the first time, he didn't see recognition, he saw distance. Victoria closed the folder again. Completely this time. The document disappeared from view, but the truth didn't. She looked at Marcus, calm, unshaken. Now you understand the timing, she said. He didn't respond, because he did, not everything. But enough. Enough to realize that whatever he thought he controlled, he never did. Benjamin's phone vibrated again. He glanced at it, then looked at Victoria. One more confirmation, he said quietly. Victoria nodded once. Marcus watched that exchange, and something in his chest tightened into something colder than anger. Fear, because whatever was coming next was already in motion. Benjamin didn't answer immediately. He looked at Victoria first. She gave the smallest nod. That was enough. The board has already convened, he said. The words didn't sound loud, but they landed harder than anything else that morning. Marcus blinked. That's not possible. You don't just call a board meeting without notifying, finished calmly. We did. Marcus's chest tightened. I didn't get anything. That's correct, Benjamin said. The room shifted again. Not dramatically, but clearly. Marcus felt it this time. The difference between being part of something and being removed from it. That doesn't make any sense, Marcus said, his voice starting to crack under the pressure. I'm the chief brand officer. You don't make decisions like that without me. Victoria watched him, still calm, still steady. You were, she said. The past tense hung in the air. Marcus froze. What does that mean? He asked. Victoria didn't answer right away. She let him feel it. The gap. The realization trying to form. Benjamin stepped in. The position is under review, he said carefully. Effective immediately. Pending board ratification. Marcus shook his head, disbelief turning into something sharper. Review? For what? On what grounds? No one spoke. That silence answered him more clearly than words could. Lauren stepped forward, her voice sharper now, defensive. This is retaliation. That's what this is. You're punishing him because of what he said. Victoria turned to her slowly. No, she said. This is documentation. Lauren faltered for half a second. Documentation of what? Victoria didn't raise her voice. Of a senior executive using a company event, on company property, in front of partners and press, to conduct a personal affair with a direct subordinate. The words were precise, measured, unavoidable. Lauren's face lost color. Marcus felt the ground shift under him. That's not, he started, then stopped, because it was. He looked around the room, the cameras still recording, the crew still watching, the producers not interrupting. Everything he had thought would be a moment of control had become evidence. "You set this up," Marcus said, his voice low now, almost desperate. "You knew this was going to happen." Victoria didn't deny it. "I knew enough," she said. The truth of that hit harder than an accusation. Lauren shook her head. "That doesn't change anything. You're twisting a personal situation into corporate policy." Benjamin stepped forward again, calm but firm. "It is corporate policy," he said. "Conflict of interest, misuse of position, reputational risk, all clearly outlined in the governance agreement Mr. Hale signed." Marcus turned sharply toward him. "I never agreed to anything like this." "You did," Benjamin replied. "Years ago." Marcus's mind raced, trying to remember. Contracts, documents, things he had skimmed, things he had assumed were standard, things he had never taken seriously, because he never thought they would apply to him. Victoria watched that realization settle in. Slow, unavoidable. "You didn't read them," she said quietly. "It wasn't an insult. It was a fact." Marcus swallowed. "That doesn't give you the right to protect what I built," she asked. The question stopped him, because for the first time he couldn't answer it. Lauren stepped back again. Another half step, distance growing. "You're overreaching," she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. "You can't just remove him because of—" "He removed himself," Victoria said. The room went quiet again. Marcus felt it now, not just the tension, the judgment, the shift in how people saw him. "You think this is going to hold," he said, grasping for something solid. "You think the board is just going to side with you without question?" Victoria didn't argue. She didn't explain. She simply said they already did. Benjamin's phone buzzed again. This time he didn't hesitate. He answered it. "Yes," he said, listening. A pause. Then understood. He ended the call and looked at Victoria. "It's confirmed," he said. Marcus's heart pounded. "What's confirmed?" he demanded. Benjamin met his eyes. The vote. The word hit harder than anything else. Marcus shook his head immediately. "No, that's not possible. You can't vote on something like this in a few hours." "They've had more than a few hours," Benjamin replied. Marcus froze. "More than a few hours. Meaning, this didn't start here. This didn't start this morning. This had been in motion, before he ever walked into the room. Before he ever picked up the microphone. "You planned this," he said, his voice barely holding together. Victoria didn't flinch. "I prepared," she corrected. The difference mattered. Marcus felt it. Lauren looked between them, panic starting to show. "What vote?" she asked. Benjamin answered her this time. "Removal of executive authority," he said. Effective immediately. The words fell like a final line being drawn. Marcus stared at him. "You can't do that without cause." Benjamin held his gaze. "We have cause." Marcus's grip on the microphone loosened completely. It slipped from his hand, hit the floor. The sound echoed in the silence. No one rushed to pick it up. No one broke the moment. Marcus looked at Victoria, really looked at her. And for the first time, he saw something he had never allowed himself to see before. Not anger, not hurt. Control, complete and absolute. "You're serious," he said. Victoria didn't answer. She didn't need to. Lauren took another step back, then another, until she wasn't standing beside Marcus anymore. She didn't leave the room, but she left him. The distance said everything. Marcus noticed, slowly, painfully. "You're not even going to say anything?" he asked her. Lauren didn't meet his eyes. "I didn't sign up for this," she said quietly. The words cut deeper than anything Victoria had said. Marcus laughed once, bitter, sharp. "You didn't sign up for what?" he asked. "Consequences?" Lauren didn't respond, because there was nothing to say. She turned slightly, putting more space between them. Marcus felt it, the shift, the abandonment. The same way he had expected Victoria to break, Lauren was already stepping away. Victoria watched it happen, not with satisfaction, just clarity. "This is what you chose," she said. Marcus looked at her, anger flaring again. "Don't act like you're above this. You're using power to humiliate me." Victoria held his gaze. "You did that yourself," she said. The truth of it left no room to argue. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it again, because there was nothing left that didn't sound weak. Benjamin stepped forward one final time. "There will be a formal statement released," he said. "You'll be contacted regarding next steps." Marcus turned to him, sharply. Benjamin didn't hesitate. "For your exit," the word landed. Final, unavoidable. Marcus stood there. In the middle of the room he thought he owned. Surrounded by people who were no longer on his side. Holding nothing, Lauren didn't move closer. didn't defend him, didn't even look at him anymore. Victoria closed the distance between them one last time, not aggressively, not emotionally, just enough to be heard clearly. "You wanted an audience," she said quietly. He didn't respond. "You have one." She stepped back, and just like that, the space between them became permanent. Benjamin's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, then looked at Victoria. "They're asking if you want to proceed now," he said. Victoria didn't hesitate. "Yes," Marcus' head snapped up. "Proceed what?" he demanded. Victoria met his eyes, calm, certain. With the rest of it, the words didn't explain, they didn't need to. Because whatever came next was going to take everything he still thought he had left. No one moved when Victoria said it. With the rest of it, the room felt smaller somehow. Like the walls had leaned in closer, like the air had thickened around Marcus without him noticing until it was too late. "What rest?" he asked. But the question came out weaker than he intended. Victoria didn't answer him. She turned instead, just slightly, enough for Benjamin to step forward again. The folder was still in her hand, but now she held it differently. Not like something fragile, like something final. Benjamin spoke, calm as ever. "We'll need a moment to formally document this transition." Marcus let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Transition? You think you can just walk in here and rewrite everything in real time?" Victoria looked at him again. "You already did," she said. The words hit harder than the announcement had, because they were true. Marcus felt it then. Not anger, something worse. The beginning of understanding. "You're not just talking about my position," he said slowly. Victoria didn't blink. "No." Lauren's breath caught behind him. "Marcus." He ignored, he demanded. Victoria didn't rush. She let the silence stretch, just enough to make every person in that room lean in. Then she opened the folder. Not wide. Not dramatically. Just enough to take out a single page. Paper. Simple. But the way Benjamin straightened beside her made it clear. This wasn't ordinary. Marcus watched her hands. Steady. She unshaken. "How long?" he asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. "How long have you been planning this?" Victoria tilted her head slightly. "I haven't been planning anything against you," she said. "I've been finishing something for myself." The distinction landed. Marcus felt it settle in his chest. Uncomfortable, unfamiliar, dangerous. "What is that?" Lauren asked. Her voice tight now, controlled but cracking at the edges. Victoria didn't look at her. "This," she said softly, lifting the page, "is the final confirmation." Benjamin added, almost as if reading her intention, "signed at midnight." Midnight, the same word from earlier. The same moment Marcus had ignored when she mentioned it. He swallowed. Confirmation of what? Victoria met his eyes, and this time there was no distance in her gaze, no softness left. Ownership. The word didn't echo, it didn't need to. Marcus felt something drop inside him. Heavy, immediate. "That's not possible," he said quickly, too quickly. "You don't own this company, you don't own any of this. You run a division, a small one." Victoria didn't react to the insult. She simply held the page a little higher. "Read it," she said. Marcus didn't move. He didn't reach for it. Because something in him already knew, reading it would change everything. Benjamin stepped closer and held the document where Marcus could see it without taking it. A legal header, a series of signatures. Names Marcus didn't recognize, but one name he had seen 1,000 times without ever understanding its weight, sat at the bottom. Victoria Hale, not as an employee, not as an executive, as the controlling owner. Marcus stared at it. Too long, too still. "This is a joke," said, but there was no conviction behind it. Some kind of stunt. "You think a piece of paper is going to." "It's not a piece of paper," Benjamin said quietly. "It's a closing agreement." Marcus shook his head, stepping back now as if distance might make it less real. No, that's not how this works. You don't just become an owner overnight." Victoria's voice stayed calm. "I didn't. The truth was simple. Too simple." Marcus felt his chest tighten again. "Then what is this?" he demanded. Victoria looked at him the way someone looks at a question they've already answered. It's the moment it became public. The room shifted again, not loudly, but completely, because now the silence meant something else. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was realization. Lauren stepped back another inch, almost unconsciously. "Marcus," she whispered again. He didn't respond. He couldn't. Because everything he had built his identity on, everything he thought he understood about power, was unraveling in front of him. "You're saying," he tried, his voice breaking slightly, "you're saying you've been, what? Building this behind my back?" Victoria didn't raise her voice. "I've been building this," she said, "while you were busy underestimating it." The words landed harder than any accusation. Because they weren't emotional, they were factual. Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "This doesn't make sense," he said, more to himself now than to anyone else. "I would have known. There would have been signs." Victoria didn't argue. "There were," she said. He looked up at her sharply. "Where?" he demanded. She didn't answer immediately. She let him sit with it. "Then you just didn't think they mattered." Marcus's mind raced. Late nights. Emails she didn't explain. Calls she stepped outside to take. Checks he never asked about. Meetings he assumed were small. All of it, stacking together now into something he couldn't ignore anymore. Lauren saw it happening, the shift in his face, the collapse of certainty. And for the first time she looked afraid. Not of Victoria, of the situation she had walked into. "This wasn't part of the plan," she said under her breath. Marcus heard her this time. Slowly he turned. "What plan?" he asked. Lauren hesitated. That was enough. Marcus's expression hardened. "You said this was about us," he said. "You said this was about getting out of something small and moving into something bigger." Lauren didn't answer. Because now there was no bigger thing left to move into. Victoria watched the moment quietly, not with satisfaction, with clarity. "People who chase power without understanding it," she said softly, "usually end up standing in the wrong place when it finally shows itself." Marcus looked back at her, and for the first time he didn't see his wife. He saw someone else entirely, someone he had never really known. "You lied to me," he said. Victoria didn't flinch. "I didn't tell you everything," she corrected. "That's the same thing," he shot back. "No," she said calmly. "It isn't." The difference hung between them. Heavy, unavoidable. Marcus opened his mouth again, but whatever he was about to say died before it reached his lips, because Benjamin's phone rang. Again. This time he didn't step aside. He answered it right there. "Yes," he said. A pause, then his posture shifted slightly, not dramatically, but enough for Victoria to notice. "Yes," he repeated. "She's here." Another pause. Benjamin looked at Victoria. "They're ready," he said. Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Ready for what?" he demanded. Louder now, urgency breaking through. Benjamin didn't answer him. He looked only at Victoria. "The board wants you on the call," he said. Now, the room froze again. Not because of Marcus this time. Because of her, Victoria closed the folder, slowly, deliberately. Then she handed it back to Benjamin. "Set it up," she said. Marcus stepped forward instinctively. "You're not going anywhere." The words came out sharp. Desperate. Victoria stopped, turned back, and for the first time since the beginning she stepped closer to him, close enough that he could hear her without the room. "You already announced your decision," she said quietly. Her voice dropped just enough to cut through everything else. "Now I'm going to announce mine." Marcus felt something inside him crack, not loud, but final. Victoria straightened, her expression unchanged. Benjamin was already dialing. Lauren had gone completely still, her earlier confidence gone without a trace. The crew hadn't stopped filming. No one dared. Victoria took one last look at Marcus, not with anger, not with regret, with something far colder, final understanding. Then she turned and walked toward the door. Marcus didn't follow. He couldn't. Because for the first time in his life, he didn't know if he still had the right to stand in that room. And just before she stepped out, Benjamin spoke again, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're asking for confirmation," he said. Victoria didn't turn around. "Tell them," she said. "I'm ready to take control." The door opened, and everything Marcus thought he owned walked out with her. The boardroom was quiet in a different way than the studio. There were no cameras, no flashing lights, no audience waiting for a reaction. Only polished glass, closed doors, and people who understood exactly what power looked like when it had entered a room. Victoria didn't rush when she stepped inside. She didn't need to. Every person at that long table had already turned toward her, before she reached the chair at the head, not because of her title, because of what they had just read. Benjamin closed the door behind her and took his usual place at her side, not speaking, not prompting. He didn't have to. Victoria set her phone down on the table, the call already connected. The screen showed faces in small squares, investors, legal advisors, board members dialing in from different cities, all waiting. "Let's proceed," she said. Her voice was steady, measured, not louder than necessary. The chairman, an older man who had spent decades in corporate rooms like this, nodded once. For the record, we are confirming the execution of the acquisition and the transfer of controlling interest. Victoria didn't look at him. I confirm. No hesitation, no performance, just fact. The words settled over the room like a final signature. A few people shifted in their seats. Others simply watched her more carefully now, because something had changed, not in the documents, or in how they saw her. You now hold majority control across all merged entities, the chairman continued, effective immediately. Victoria inclined her head slightly. I understand. Benjamin slid a thin document toward her, already prepared. She glanced at it, not reading every line. Or she already knew what it said. She had written half of it herself. Before we finalize, another voice came through the speaker. Sharper, more cautious. We need to address the situation at the studio. There it was. Not a surprise. Or just timing. Victoria rested her fingers lightly on the edge of the table. What specifically? She asked. A senior officer, the voice continued, careful with every word, used a company event on company property or in front of media partners to publicly announce a personal relationship with a subordinate. Silence. Measured, professional. But underneath it, judgment. Victoria didn't interrupt. She let the facts sit. Conflict of interest is clear, another voice added. Reputational risk is immediate. Victoria exhaled slowly, not because she was overwhelmed. Then document it, she said. The chairman looked at her directly now. We will need your authorization for disciplinary action. Victoria met his gaze. You have it. Simple. Clean. No emotion attached. But everyone in that room just understood what it meant. Marcus Hale's position wasn't being questioned anymore. It was being ended. Effective immediately? Someone asked. Victoria didn't look away. Yes. The word landed like a closing door. No one argued. They didn't need to. Because this wasn't personal, it was structural, and structures don't bend for emotion. Benjamin made a note beside her, already moving through the legal sequence in his mind. There is also the matter of the subordinate involved, another board member said carefully, Lauren. Victoria's expression didn't change. Same policy applies, she said. No anger, no bitterness, just consistency. Benjamin spoke quietly beside her. We'll need documentation from HR and a formal record of the incident. It's all recorded, Victoria said. That was the truth. Every second of it. The board understood what that meant. There would be no ambiguity, no competing narratives, only evidence. Then we proceed, the chairman concluded. One by one, confirmations followed. Votes, acknowledgments, formalities that turned decisions into reality. Victoria signed the final document in front of her. Slowly, deliberately, the pen moved without hesitation. When she finished, she set it down and leaned back slightly. It was done, not the story, but this part of it. Congratulations, the chairman said after a moment. It wasn't warm, it wasn't cold, it was respectful. Victoria nodded once. Thank you. The call ended. The screen went dark, and for the first time since she walked into that room, the silence felt different. Not heavy, not tense, complete. Benjamin gathered the documents, stacking them neatly. We'll initiate the notices within the hour, he said. Victoria stood. Do it. She didn't ask for updates. She didn't ask for confirmation. She trusted the system she had built. That was the difference. When she stepped out of the boardroom, the hallway felt almost too quiet. No one stopped her, but people noticed. They always did. Not because she demanded attention. Because something about her presence made it impossible to ignore. Across the building in a smaller office that suddenly felt too tight for him, Marcus sat alone. The adrenaline from the studio had worn off. What remained was something colder, something sharper. He stared at his phone. No messages from Victoria. No calls. Lauren's last text still sat unread. Call me, he didn't. He couldn't decide what to say. Because the version of the story he had believed in, the one where he walked away clean, powerful, in control, was already falling apart. A notification appeared on his screen. Company email. He opened it without thinking, then stopped. Read it again and again. Effective immediately, his name, his title. Past tense. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. No, he muttered under his breath. This wasn't real. This couldn't be how it ended. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor, and grabbed his jacket. He needed to see her. He needed to fix this. Because somewhere in his mind, a part of him still believed this was a misunderstanding. A temporary shift. Something he could talk his way through. That belief carried him down the hallway, through the elevators, across the lobby, until he saw her. Victoria stood near the exit, speaking quietly with Benjamin. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't hiding. She looked exactly the same as she always had, and completely different. Marcus walked toward her faster than he intended. Victoria, she turned, calm, unsurprised, like she had expected this moment. "We need to talk," he said. Benjamin stepped back slightly, giving them space but not leaving. Victoria looked at Marcus for a long second, then nodded. "All right." The simplicity of it unsettled him more than resistance would have. "This isn't how this ends," he said quickly. "You can't just—" "I didn't," she said. He stopped, confused. "You made your decision," she continued. "I made mine. That's not what this is," he snapped. "This is you overreacting. You're trying to prove a point." Victoria didn't raise her voice. "I don't need to prove anything." The words landed flat, final. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustration rising. "You're going to throw everything away because of one moment?" Victoria's eyes didn't soften. It wasn't one moment. Silence stretched between them. Marcus felt it pressing in. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said, quieter now. "You're destroying us." Victoria held his gaze. "No," she said, "you did that." The truth hit harder than anger ever could. Marcus opened his mouth again, but stopped, because for the first time he didn't have a response. Victoria glanced briefly at Benjamin, then back at Marcus. "The formal notice has already been sent," she said. Marcus froze. "What notice?" She didn't hesitate. "Your termination." The word settled. Heavy, unavoidable. Marcus stared at her, searching for something. Anything, but there was nothing left to negotiate, nothing left to argue. Only consequences. "You can't do this," he said, but it sounded hollow now. Victoria didn't respond, because she already had. Benjamin stepped forward slightly. "Any further communication regarding your position should be directed through legal counsel," he said calmly. Marcus didn't look at him. He only looked at her, and finally he saw it. Not anger, not revenge. Distance. Complete. Permanent. Victoria stepped back, not dramatically, just enough to create space, and then she turned, again. Marcus didn't follow this time. He couldn't. Because something in him finally understood. He wasn't losing control. He had already lost it. Victoria walked toward the exit. The glass doors reflected her back at her, not as someone who had just won, but as someone who had finally stopped carrying what was never hers to hold. Behind her, Marcus stood still, and in his pocket his phone vibrated again. Another email. He didn't open it, not yet. Because some part of him already knew this time it wouldn't just be his title, it would be everything. The envelope sat on the edge of the glass desk, untouched. Marcus had seen it when he walked in, but he hadn't picked it up right away. He already knew what it was. The weight of it didn't come from the paper. It came from everything that had led to it. Victoria stood by the window, looking out over the city. The same skyline they had once talked about, like it was something they would conquer together. Now it felt distant, separate. "You're really going through with it," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Victoria didn't turn immediately. She let the silence settle first, the kind that used to make her uncomfortable years ago. "Not anymore." "Yes," she said. Simple, final. Marcus picked up the envelope at last. His name was printed cleanly across the front. No emotion in the ink, just fact. "Divorce," he said under his breath, almost like he needed to hear the word out loud to believe it. Victoria turned then slowly. "It didn't start today," she said. "You ended it before the cameras ever turned on." Marcus let out a breath that felt heavier than anything he had carried before. "I didn't think." He stopped. That was the truth of it. He hadn't thought. Not about consequences. Not about her. Not about anything beyond the moment he wanted to feel powerful again. "You didn't think I would leave," Victoria finished for him. He didn't argue, because that was exactly what he had believed. That no matter what he said, no matter what he did, she would stay, quiet, steady. Always there to absorb the damage. "You could have told me," he said after a moment, his voice lower now, "about all of this, about who you really were." Victoria shook her head slightly. "I wanted you to love me without needing that answer," she said. The words didn't sound bitter. They sounded tired. Marcus looked down at the envelope again. "And I failed." She didn't correct him, because some things didn't need to be said twice. He opened the envelope slowly. The papers inside were thick, precise, written by people who understood how to end things cleanly. There were no dramatic terms, no punishments hidden in fine print, or just clarity, division of assets, legal separation, a settlement. Marcus paused at that page. His eyes scanned the number, then stopped. "You're giving me this?" he asked, looking up. Victoria met his gaze. "It's fair." He let out a short, disbelieving breath. Fair, after everything I did? Yes. The word landed softer than he expected. I don't owe you anything, she continued, but I'm not interested in turning this into something uglier than it already was. Marcus stared at her. He had expected anger, or revenge, something sharp enough to match what he had done. But this was something else, something harder to face. You're just letting me walk away? He asked. Victoria stepped closer, stopping a few feet in front of him. I'm letting myself walk away, she said. That was the difference. Marcus felt it. Deep, unavoidable. You really don't hate me, he said quietly. Victoria considered that for a moment, then shook her head. No, she said, I don't. That should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like loss, because hate would have meant there was still something left between them. This felt like the absence of it. I thought I needed more, Marcus admitted, his voice rougher now. More recognition, more power. I thought you were holding me back. Victoria didn't interrupt. I didn't see what you were building, he continued. I didn't even try to. She nodded once. I know. The simplicity of her response made it worse. Marcus folded the papers slowly, his hands less steady than he wanted them to be. And now, he asked, what happens now? Victoria glanced toward the window again. The company moves forward, she said. I move forward. And me? She looked back at him. You start over. No cruelty, no sarcasm, just truth. Marcus swallowed. There was no version of this where he walked back into what he had lost, no speech that could undo it, no apology that could rebuild something he had already broken in public. He understood that now, too late. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. Victoria nodded. Good, not harsh, just honest. Marcus gave a small, humorless smile. At least you're still honest with me. I always was, she said. He couldn't argue with that either. The silence stretched again, but it didn't feel tense anymore. It felt like the end of something that had already been over for a long time. Marcus signed the papers, slowly. Each stroke of the pen felt heavier than the last. When he finished, he set it down and slid the documents back toward her. That's it, he said. Victoria picked them up, glancing over the signature briefly before passing them to Benjamin, who had been standing quietly near the door the entire time. It's done, he said, more to confirm than to announce. Victoria nodded. Marcus stood there for another second, like he was waiting for something. A reason to stay, a reason to fight. But there was nothing left, so he turned and walked toward the door. Halfway there, he stopped. Not because she called his name, she didn't. He stopped because something in him needed to say one last thing. I was wrong about you, he said without turning around. Victoria didn't move. I know, he nodded once, even though she couldn't see it. Then he walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft, final sound. Victoria stood still for a moment after he left. Not celebrating, not grieving, just breathing. The room felt different now, lighter, like something that had been pressing against her for years had finally lifted. Benjamin placed the finalized documents neatly on the desk. Everything will be filed by the end of the day, he said. Thank you, Victoria replied. He hesitated for a moment. You handled that better than most people would have. Victoria gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. I didn't handle it for him, she said. I handled it for me. Benjamin nodded, understanding more than she said out loud, and left her alone. Gone. Victoria walked back to the window. The city hadn't changed. The noise, the movement, the endless rush of people chasing something just out of reach, it was all still there. But she felt different standing above it now. Not because of the money, not because of the title, because she had finally stopped letting someone else decide what she was worth. She rested her hand lightly against the glass, her reflection faint but steady. For the first time in a long time, there was no weight in her chest, no quiet question about whether she had done enough, given enough, been enough. She already knew the answer. She always had. She just didn't need anyone else to confirm it anymore. Somewhere below, life went on, unaware, unchanged, and above it, Victoria turned away from the window and walked toward the door, not looking back. If her silence meant something to you, or maybe you understand the kind of strength that doesn't need to be seen to be real, tell me what you would have done in her place, and whether letting go is harder than holding on.